Hey, sports fans, this is Robert with WTP Sports News here live for another edition of Talking Sports Sunday. This morning, we're going to be talking about March Madness, Elite Eight going to the Final Four in men's and women's basketball. We got a chance to watch some really good basketball yesterday on the women's side and on the men's side. Man, I was excited to be able to see my Texas Longhorns women's team advance to the Final Four after beating Kentucky yesterday, 76-54. But before we get into that game action, let's talk a little bit about Michigan's women defeating Louisville. This was a 2-3 matchup that I really felt like maybe Louisville had an opportunity out of all of the lower seeds who was matched up against a higher seed, even though it was a 2-3 matchup and they were similarly seeded. I thought that Louisville could possibly overcome this Michigan team. They weren't able to do that, and Michigan was able to get the win 71-52, a 19-point advantage. I didn't see that coming, but a great game by those Michigan girls, led by Olsen, who is probably going to be on one of those All-American teams, whether it be first or second or third team. I think she's a really dynamic guard for Michigan. Finished the game 8 of 19 with 19 points. Played really well. I thought her and the other guard beside her, Swords, played really well. She chipped in 16 points on 6 of 14 shooting. Great job by the Lady Wolverines, which we've been seeing all over social media where they're calling Michigan everything school, which means all of their sports teams are figuring in and they're doing really great no matter what sports team they have. They don't have any sports teams that are dragging in the bottom of the barrel when it comes to college athletics. So kudos to the Michigan women and the win they got yesterday over Louisville, 71-52. Congratulations to Olsen. You'll be moving on to the Final Four to meet up with one of these juggernauts that are playing today. Also, we had a good game yesterday where we saw the Texas Longhorns defeat Kentucky yesterday. Again, it was a 1-5 matchup. So, of course, we felt like it would probably be one of those games where Texas would probably dominate their Kentucky team. And they were able to do that behind the scoring of Mrs. Lee, dropping in, I believe, 18, 19 points in that game, followed by Madison Booker, who will be another All-American on one of those first 3 teams. She dropped in, I believe, 17 points in an effort. She had 8 rebounds as well. Really good competitive game by that Texas team, and I like the way this Texas team is playing right now. If I had to pick someone who could probably give UConn a contest, it would probably be this Texas team. I think um, they could give this a UConn team a run for that championship, for that title. So congratulations to Texas. The Lady Horns move on with a victory over Kentucky, 76-54. And like I mentioned earlier, they were led by Lee and by Madison Booker in that game, who both of them scored in double figures. And a good win for Texas as they move on to the Elite Eight. Next, and they'll be playing again, I believe, on Monday. Also, we had a good game yesterday between TCU. Let me find that game on my screen. Da, 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 da. Let me see. Oh, man. Man, where's that at? Oh, there you go. TCU over Virginia. Of course, we really thought that this win over Virginia was going to be pretty easy for TCU. That was a 3 seed versus a 10 seed, and we felt like maybe Virginia wouldn't have enough to compete with that TCU team, and that TCU team prevailed 79-69 over Virginia, led by the scoring of that transfer from Notre Dame, who had 33 points, Suarez, and Miss Miles dropped in 28 for that TCU team, which is going to be a tough team for any team to match up with. They have really good guard play, and they have a player in the post that can really score. So that TCU team is going to be a tough team to beat, and we'll see who they match up with in the next round. Hopefully, they can advance and continue to be playing ball. In that last game that we had yesterday on the slate, we had South Carolina against. Oh, who did South Carolina play? Man, I need to be on my stuff. Running a little bit late here. Let me see who that South Carolina team played. Oh, there you go. South Carolina, Oklahoma, which I thought this was going to be a good game because this is two teams from the SEC that are pretty familiar with each other. But what we saw out of South Carolina yesterday, winning 94-68, the way they played and the way they dominated that game, I thought this was going to be a close game. I thought Aaliyah Chavez and them would be able to compete with South Carolina because of the familiarity of playing in the SEC, but that was not the case. South Carolina just totally dominated this game, 94-68, which I did not expect that to be the case. That South Carolina team, let me see here. That South Carolina team was led by some balanced scoring. Lotson, the guard, had 28 points in that game. They also got balanced scoring from Raven Johnson, who had 18, and the other Johnson guard had chipped in 14. But they had balanced scoring. Edwards had 8, and Ocott had 9. So they had some real balanced scoring. And then off the bench, Mercier gave them a 10 points. So that's double digits for her. So that South Carolina team is going to be a tough team to have to beat as well. I think that anytime you have women playing at this high of a level, kudos to them. The NBA, the WNBA, that is going to be adding some more teams to their league, which means some of these players that are coming out this year are going to find them some homes where they can be the star and not have to necessarily play behind some women who have already been there for a while, which I think that is awesome for the women's game. I kind of wish we didn't have to. We could just be talking basketball and not have to say the men's game and a woman's game. But I guess that's just the way it is right now because of how things have started off. So I wish one day we could just be talking ball and not have to separate the thing, men's game and women's game. Maybe at some point we'll get to that level. But today we got some really, really good matchups. We got UConn, who we feel like is probably the best team. At least I feel like is the best team in college basketball on the women's side. And they are going to face off against Notre Dame, who I feel has the best player in college football, 5'6", Hannah Hidalgo, who we've seen what she's been doing all season long. I mean, she's a walking double scoring. She's either going to get it on the assist side, on the steal side, or on the rebound side. At only 5'6", I think she's going to probably be definitely on the All-American team, but I think she might even get Player of the Year in women's college basketball because she has been playing that dynamic two-way player. She plays on the offense end of the court And on the defensive end of the court, I think she's a phenomenal player at only 5'6". And when it's her time to go on to the WNBA, somebody's going to really get them a really, really good basketball player with a high IQ who can guard the other team's best guard and give them some work because she is really, really talented at on the defensive side of the ball and on the offensive side of the ball. So we got to wait and see how that thing all plays out today when UConn and Notre Dame plays. But I think this is going to be the end of the road for Notre Dame. I think this UConn team from 1 through 8, 9, 10 is probably the better team, and they're going to be able to take advantage of the advantages that they have against Notre Dame. And I got the UConn ladies advancing on to play whoever they got to play in that next round on Monday. I mean, on no, they won't play again until next weekend because they got the game today. So we'll get to see what they look like. The people who played yesterday, of course, will play on Monday, but the ones who played today, they played on Friday, so they're playing to make it to the Final Four on next week. So hopefully we can get a good matchup between those two teams, UConn and Notre Dame. But I got UConn winning that game. I just think that they play really, really good defense, and they're going to be able to slow down Hannah Hidalgo, and they're going to be able to keep her from getting 10 steals like she did in that last matchup that she had on Friday, where she had almost a quadruple double: points, rebounds, assists, and scoring. Only she didn't have a double digits in assists in that game, but to have 10 steals, to have 30 something odd points, and to have 12 rebounds at 5'6" is really, really, really amazing to see from a player like that. But she got her hands full against that UConn team today. We'll see how that goes. Also, we got number 1 UCLA, and they face Duke today, the number 3 seed Duke team. I think this can be a good matchup, but the size of that UCLA team is probably going to give Duke fits. But the speed of Duke may be able to keep them in this game. And if they can stay in it down the stretch and be down to just a couple of possessions at the end of the game, if they can make some plays on the offensive end and on the defensive end, they could possibly pull out this victory. I think this could be a very close game between Duke and UCLA. The thing that concerns me for Duke is they got to be able to handle those bigs. The bigs for UCLA is going to be tough for them. It's going to be really, really tough for them. So we'll have TCU facing off against South Carolina. We'll also have Michigan facing off against Texas, and then we'll be waiting to see what those other 4 teams will be to make it to the Elite Eight on the women's side. So today we will have, of course, Duke, UCLA, UConn, and Notre Dame. And let me see if they got any more games on their slate. And then tomorrow we'll have to make it to the Final Four. That is, we'll have Michigan, Texas, TCU, South Carolina. They'll play tomorrow to make it to the Final Four, and then Notre Dame and UConn is trying to punch their ticket to the Final Four, and then Duke and UCLA are trying to punch their tickets to the Final Four. So that's going to be 2 games of a really, really, really good basketball on the women's side today and tomorrow. So make sure you tune into that. Let's flip over to the men's side. Yesterday, where we got to see some really good men's basketball. Today, we're going to have some really, really good games today as well. I just wish those things didn't come on so late at night because, many of us got to go to work tomorrow. Of course, we didn't have to go to work today, but many of us go to church, and sometimes, you don't want to be up all late at night when you know you got a big day ahead of you tomorrow. But today we'll be seeing number one Michigan against number six Tennessee. I don't know how much trouble Tennessee is going to be able to give this Michigan team, who I feel has the best big man left in the tournament. He's been able to do some amazing things. YL, that is, for this Michigan team. He's been able to play really, really good basketball. Mara's been able to do some things to help him out in the big man spots. But I think this Michigan team plays really, really good defense, and they can score the ball. And they're getting a lot of production out of number 21. I forget his name, but he's been giving them some good, solid production. He's not scoring a lot, but he's playing good defense. He's rebounding in, and he's helping that team by being the role player that he is. And we'll also get number two UConn versus number one Duke today to see who advances to the Final Four to play Illinois, who punched their ticket yesterday with the win over Iowa in that matchup yesterday. And then we saw Arizona come back to beat Purdue, who, when Purdue was beating them at halftime 38-31, I felt like maybe Purdue has found a formula to beat Arizona, but that wasn't the case. They went down 79-64, and then Illinois beat Iowa 71-59. And this Illinois team is really a team that I thought was going to lose to Houston. But with that win over Houston, I think that gave them a confidence and a formula that they could use to go on in this tournament. And I don't know if they're going to meet Duke or UConn, but I think this Illinois team can give both of those teams some fits, even though those teams might have a quickness advantage over Illinois. I think that Illinois bigs, man, they got a lot of big bodies that they can run out at you. And they got Stojakovic coming off of the bench as their sixth man, who's coming in with instant offense, who's aggressive, who's going to get to the cup, and who could also shoot the three. That makes them a really tough matchup for either UConn or Duke because of the fact that they got so many big guys out there on the court who can handle the basketball and who can pass at a very high clip and a very high IQ. I really like this Illinois team, and I think they could beat either Duke or UConn. I guess we'll find out who they'll be matching up with when those two teams play today, Duke and UConn, that is, to advance to the Final Four. And like we said in that other matchup, Purdue was leading at halftime 38-31, and I thought my man T1 was on to something because he picked Purdue to win this game. It might have been because he's a Big Ten guy, but he thought that there are some things that Purdue could do to slow down this Arizona team and win this game. And like I said, they were winning at half 38-31. But Arizona, who I feel is the most balanced team in this tournament, was able to turn it on in the second half relatively quickly and was able to exhaust that 7-point lead that Purdue had and then go ahead and take a nice double-digit lead over them. And it didn't take them a long time to make that happen. And then they went on to win 79-64 with a 15-point victory. And when you look at that, 15-7, you got a 22-point swing right there. And it's like, you just like, what happened? How did Purdue allow Arizona to go on such a run? But Arizona is so balanced. They got so many phenomenal players that it's kind of hard to keep that team from scoring because they can score from so many different positions in so many different ways. It's kind of hard to stop a team who have 5 players on the court when you got to worry about all 5 of them scoring on you. So Arizona advances, and they'll be waiting on the winner of Michigan and and Tennessee. I really feel like Michigan and Arizona are the best two teams in this tournament. I felt like they were the best two teams going into the tournament. And sometimes I just wish that the committee, when they're making these decisions, they could find a way to maybe, and it might be a little bit biased to do this, but when you see that you got the two best, who you feel like is the two best teams in the country that are playing the best at that point, and you know they're going to be number one seeds, I would like to see them possibly put them on opposite sides of the bracket so that there's a good chance that the two best teams that you think are in the tournament can meet for the championship. Because I would much rather see Michigan and Arizona in a national championship game than I would want to see them in the Final Four game because I feel like they're the two best teams in the tournament. Right now, we're probably going to be facing Illinois either with Duke or UConn, which I don't think either one of any of those three teams can match up with a Michigan or with an Arizona. But also, I mean, I can count Tennessee out. Tennessee is a team who surprised us and was able to beat Iowa State and Virginia, two games that I thought that they would lose, but they ended up prevailing in those games. And maybe they can give Michigan a little bit of trouble. I don't think so. I think Michigan's going to advance today to go on to play against um, Arizona in the Final Four. But on the other side, I don't know if Duke is going to be able to beat this UConn team. I think this UConn team is really playing. They've overcome quite a bit of adversity going towards the end of the season. They had some things that they had to overcome. They're overcoming those things and they're playing really good basketball right now. They jumped out on Michigan State in that last game and was able to go ahead and coast on to a win in that game. And I think Duke is a team that if Cameron Boozer is not balling out and not leading that team, if he gets into foul trouble or they decide to take him away and force other guys on Duke to win. Now we got a good game from Evans last time. I think that's going to be UConn's key to winning against Duke if they can get Cameron Boozer in foul trouble or if they're able to take him away as one of their main options to see if somebody else can beat them. Duke has a really, really talented team, and I'm sure they could do that if they take Boozer away. But I know they're going to have a game plan for him, and hopefully it works out because we saw in that last game where Duke was able to have really a two game between Evans and Boozer, and they both came up big in that game when Boozer hadn't had a whole lot of productivity in the first half, but in the second half, he really balled out. And him and Evans put that team on their back and willed them to that win uh, in that last game. So hopefully we'll get some really good games today. I know as fans of those teams, those fans want to probably see their team win comfortably. But I always think there's always something to be said about a real gritty, you gotta grind it out kind of game. I think it just builds a whole lot of character going into the next game, especially if it's going to be a close matchup. Because the further you go along, the better the competition is going to be, or should be anyway. So we'll see how that thing goes. I want to thank everybody out there who is tuning in. Make sure that you subscribe to all those channels that you see scrolling across the bottom. We want to give a shout out to one of our sponsors, KT's Good Eats LLC. They have a really, really phenomenal food truck that they have over there at 440 Lockbourne. Go over there and check them out. They're gonna be doing some maintenance for the next couple of weeks, for at least another week, and then they'll be right back out there on the weekends. And also go check out their sister at Social Nutrition, where you can get a really, really nice, nutritious shake and also energy teas. right there at Social Nutrition at 1336 South Hamilton Road, right there in that small plaza where you got to go down off of Hamilton Road, right there where you see you got the African spot, the store there, and you got the Mexican store to your right. She's right there in the middle. Please go check them out. That's KT's Goodies and Social Nutrition LLC. So go check them out. Those are two of our sponsors for our show, WTP Sports Dudes. Uh, our Saturday show, which is um, that we do every Saturday morning at 10, and then of course our Sunday show, Talking Sports Sunday, that we do every Sunday at 9. So please go and support them. I thank everybody for tuning in, and we want to talk a little bit about what's going on because we got a lot of teams that are playing spring ball right now, and they are getting prepared for their spring games. And I think something that really happened last year where we had teams who played not this past season, but the season before, where they first went to that 12 team playoff, and you had teams that were playing 15, 16, 17 games, that some of those teams decided they were not going to play a spring game. They might have had something for the fans where the fans was able to come and watch a practice or whatnot. But I think there was such an uproar about that, especially from fan bases, that they decided, listen, we cannot afford to take this away from our fans. This is an opportunity to do something for our fans who pay big money to support our program and see our program play. Texas, the team I support, being one of those teams who decided they weren't going to have a spring game last year. And I think that the fans were kind of concerned about that because they feel like the spring game is for the fans. It's an opportunity for the fans to be able to see what their team is going to look like going into that following regular season in the fall. And you don't want to take that away from your fans. And I think after rethinking that thing, Steve Sarkisian and that Texas staff decide, even though they didn't make the playoffs, they decided it's not something that they want to do. Now, as long as they got enough healthy players and all of that, they'll have a spring game from here out going forward. And, kudos to Ohio State. That was one of the teams who won the national championship, who played the most games out of anybody in that season, and they still had a spring game. So they showed that it could be done at some level for the fans. So I don't think we'll ever come to the point where we'll see a team not have a spring game in the future, regardless of how long the schedule is. Also, along the lines of college football, I think that, we talked yesterday about Trinidad Chambliss playing this season, the fact that the judge ruled for him to be able to play in this upcoming 2026 season. And I think that this is an opportunity for the NCAA to go ahead and rectify some of this stuff where a kid who who was perceived to have run out of eligibility, um, but that young man may go to a favorable court and get a ruling from a judge who maybe supports that team or university that player is at, and he rules that he can play, like in the case of Trinidad Chambliss. I think the NCAA has an opportunity now to get ahead of that, to keep that from happening in the future, because I think we're at a stage now where we see so many guys hitting the transfer portal that maybe guys will stop hitting the transfer portal as much. Maybe it might lower that percentage by maybe 5 to 7% if they know that there's an opportunity for me to play if this guy isn't awarded another year eligibility when it appears that their eligibility has run out. So I think that that's something that the NCAA has an opportunity right now to get out in front of, along with some other things that they really need to get out in front of, which is the calendar. We talked about this before. The fact that the NCAA football, they got this college football playoff, it goes a little bit too long for my liking. I think that I know that they're looking at it in terms of not competing with the NFL when they're trying to plug themselves in where they can to not combat with the NFL. But I think there's a way that they can do that on the front end and go ahead and maybe move the calendar up a week and play games in week 0 and then get to the point where maybe they don't play these conference championship games and they can go right into um, college football playoffs and not have 10-day, 11-day layoffs where teams play. I think they should be playing every weekend. So by the time the new year comes around, you got your national championship game right around New Year's Day. So I think that that's something that's very doable. And I think they'll eventually settle in on another portal date, which they down to one portal now, which is good. But I think they'll probably adjust that on the calendar as well, so that it fits the best case scenario for teams. They'll probably move it sometime in May after all the spring games are done. Then guys can make their moves to go to a new school, almost like in high school when guys were only coming in the summertime. You didn't have a whole lot of early enrollees like you have today. And maybe they'll probably move it to May, early June, so guys can get in summer camp, work out, and then get ready for fall ball. Maybe that might be a good calendar move for teams, and the kid can also finish out that year of classes and things like that. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. Let's talk a little bit about college basketball again, because and on the women's side and on the men's side, because the reality is many of those team seasons are over, and the portal window was opening up on April the 7th, which means there are guys on teams, and I'll take Texas for instance. Texas got two players on their team that they have some decisions to make. Dylan Swain being one. Is he going to test the market or is he going to go to the NBA? And Montas, the big man for Texas, who Texas really loves. He really loves Texas. We know that he's not going pro, but is he going to test the market? And what does Texas need to do to make sure they sign him? And then you got some other players on the team that we know are going to graduate and go on. But you have those other players on your team who may not be satisfied with their role on the team, and they decide they're going to go. And once that window opens up on April 7th, you have to really be active in how you're going to fill your roster. For instance, Texas A&M last year, they lost their coach. They were really behind the eight ball, and they had a really, really successful season this season. But they were really behind the eight ball for filling their roster spots because their coach left so late, and then he took some players with him. When that kind of stuff happened, you really got to be out in front of it. And I think Texas A&M did a really, really good job with the hire that they made and with the players that they got. But during this time, you got a player like Dylan Swain who was debating on whether or not he's going to go to the NBA or if he might even test the market and go somewhere else. Now, of course, he came from Xavier to Texas because him and Sean Miller have a really, really good relationship. I don't necessarily think that he will go to another team, but it's only wise for him to test the market, or if he decides he's not going to go straight to the NBA. But I think if he gets a first round draft grade, it's probably in his best interest to go to the NBA, even though I think there's some things that he needs to work on. But in that whole process, if he tests the market, and follow me on this, if he tests the market and he waits, and he's waiting to see what's going to happen in the market, and he decides, I'm not going to go to another school, I'm not going to stay at Texas, I'm going to go to the NBA. That's a lot of time that Texas has lost trying to find another player to fill that void that's going to be left if he decides to go to the NBA. So what needs to happen for Texas is they need to make sure they know what Dylan Swain's plans are so that they're not caught behind the eight ball trying to find a player to fill that role that Dylan Swain is going to be leaving void at Texas if he decides to go to the NBA, which I feel like he is going to be a first round pick, and I think he should go to the NBA. I think even though I know that there's some things he needs to work on, he can work on that where he's getting the best money that a basketball player can get in the NBA and go ahead and get his clock running to a second contract than to stay in college. Even though I know you want your child to get his degree, you want him to be the best basketball player he could possibly be when he gets to the NBA. He's still a young guy. He's only 20. He'll be 21, I believe, in June. So he's still a pretty young guy. And if he decides to come back another year, he'll be 22 when he gets to the NBA, which is still a really, really young man. So I think that there are two spots that they really have to worry about. But this is going to happen on every college basketball team. But once this portal opens up, you got to decide what you're going to do with the players you got. Who can you retain? Who wants to be retained? And who's going to be moving out? So you can try to find those pieces that you need to have a really good season. Because every college basketball team does not have a tier one budget. Everybody doesn't have a tier one budget. Like Arkansas has a tier one budget in basketball. Kentucky has a tier one budget in basketball, but those teams don't have tier one budgets when it comes to football. But in basketball, those teams have tier one budgets. I'm a Texas Longhorns fan, and they don't have a tier one budget in basketball, but they have a tier one budget in football. So I think Texas is more of a tier two team when it comes to basketball, where they're going to be around anywhere from 10 to 12 million, where these tier one teams, they're anywhere from 13 to 20 million on a basketball roster. So you got to make sure that, like in the case of Montas, if he wants to stay, what kind of money is it going to take to keep Montas at the University of Texas? So that portal window for basketball opens up on April the 7th, and we'll have to see what it's looking like for all of the teams around the country, because we know that there's some smaller school players who really played really, really good all season, and in the tournament, in the game or two that they played, that teams are going to be looking for those players to fill their void, which means those smaller schools are going to have to find somebody coming from maybe the high school ranks or from maybe a JUCO or whatnot to fill their voids on their team. Because there's some really small school conferences out there that play some really good basketball. When you think about, I guess if we could throw Gonzaga in there, St. Mary's, teams like that that's out there. And then we've seen the MAC. They had some really good teams this year with Miami of Ohio, Akron, who both made the tournament, and then VCU. So there's some schools out there for everybody. So hopefully these teams are really doing their due diligence to find what players are going to be out there in the portal so that they can fill the voids as quickly as possible, so those teams who are getting voids can fill those voids as quickly as possible as well. But those basketball programs have a lot on their plate that they have to deal with once April 7th rolls around. And hopefully everybody will be able to benefit from it. And we don't have any late coaching moves like Texas A&M had that kind of hurt their roster, even though they had a really good, successful season in the SEC, one of the better basketball conferences this past season, along with the Big Ten and the Big 12. The ACC was solid as well. So that's enough for on the basketball side. In terms of college football, again, of course, Texas was in day 5 of their practices for spring ball, and they've gotten a couple of guys back which is really a good sign. But then they've lost a couple of guys as well. That opens up the door for another young guy to come and play. Uh, Khalid Lockett getting hurt and missing the rest of the spring really hurts him because he's in year two, and he was probably one of those pieces that was going to be able to get into that circle of trust for Texas football at the wide receiver position. But that opens up a door for Jermaine Bishop, who they feel like is a phenomenal football player with an opportunity to get to see some action on the field, and is a really dynamic guy. He's he's only 160 pounds though, so much like Xavier Worthy was, but he has really, really good quickness. He can really, really get in and out of breaks, and he can make some noise when he gets the ball in his hand. So hopefully, he can get those extra reps and be able to get out there. And of course, Ryan Wingo and uh, Emmett Mosley have both been a little bit injured during the spring, even though I think both of them are back, but they're limited in what they can do. But we know that both of those guys are already proven. And so we don't need them out there as much as we need these young guys getting the reps to try to get an opportunity to get in the circle of trust. But I think Texas is going to be in really good shape this season. They did really well in the portal, and they did really good retaining some of their players to come back for another season at Texas, and they're destined to make a run to the college football playoffs, which adding a 9-game schedule to the SEC is going to be a little bit more difficult to do, but it also gives them a favorable opportunity to get in the college football playoffs if they have somebody who has 3 losses. Now that they've added an extra conference game, and they also got to have another game against a Power Four school, so they're not playing a cupcake schedule. They're playing a really, really tough schedule when you add 9 games in the SEC and then another Power Four game that you have to play. So that's going to be exciting to see this next college football season. I wish we had some questions in the chat that I could answer or entertain for you, but we don't have any questions in the chat. We're right at maybe 42 minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap this talk up. I appreciate everybody for tuning in and watching me this morning. The rest of the crew, they all had things on their agenda today, and they weren't able to make it. So I had to fly solo today, which is cool. You always want to have an opportunity to get on the show by yourself and, and sort of try to improve your skills. I think I did okay today for such a short notice, knowing that I was going to be on by myself. And Sunday is normally not my day to host. So, of course, I didn't have a whole lot prepared for today. But I appreciate everybody tuning in. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel scrolling across the bottom. And please go check out our website. Excuse me. At WTPSportsDudes.com. Go check it out. We would love to get your thoughts and your opinions on some of the questions we have in the news and blog section. And just tell us what you think about the website as a whole, where we can improve, and what you would like to see on there as it relates to the sports things that we got on there. Because we're willing to cover any sport that there is. And if we can plug in the sport that you like, we're willing to do that. So go check us out at WTPSportsDudes.com. Subscribe to all the channels scrolling across the bottom. And please hit the like button, share, and ask your friends and family to subscribe to our channels so that we can continue to bring you good product right here at WTP Sports Dudes. Everybody have a good one. Enjoy your Sunday, and we out. Peace.